Hello and welcome back to the Mike Live in Take two. Hello and welcome back to the Mike Live in 5 channel, where on today's full-time analysis show we're going to be going over the 0-0 draw at Goodison Park on Saturday. Initial thoughts, I actually thought that before the game I definitely would have taken a point considering our record against Dyche. I mentioned in the last video that due to his impeccable record against Thomas Frank, it kind of seems like he might have his number. So going into it, I was expecting a good performance from us, considering the bounce back against Bournemouth and considering the 2-week break that we've had. It would have given Thomas Frank time to prepare the game plan, get some players back in. We're going to touch on Igor Thiago making his debut, because I thought that was absolutely brilliant to see him in a Brentford shirt. Obviously, the game completely turned on a massive decision before half-time. We're going to touch on that. We're going to touch on the fact that the red card for Christian Norgard has been rescinded. I want to talk a little bit about our in and out of possession shape in this video. We're going to run through some chances. We're obviously going to analyse the red card because that is the big talking point of the game. And we're also going to go through some performances from key players. If you haven't already checked out the Ealing Road podcast full-time reaction video, please go and do so now. The link for that video will be in the description. And also just another quick plug from me before we get into the video. If you haven't already watched 5 things we've learned about Brentford this season, go and do so now. That was my last video and that is timeless. So the link for that will also be in the description. The link for that will also be, so the link for that video will always be, fuck me, I can't speak today. So the link for that video will also be in the description. So go and check that out before watching this or after watching this, whatever you fancy. But yeah, like I said, in today's video, we're going to be going over the Everton game 0-0, and then we'll also briefly look ahead to Leicester, but there'll also be a preview coming out on the Ealing Road podcast channel with a Leicester fan given their news this week. I thought it might be better to get the kind of inside track on that story and whether they're going to get a new manager before we play them on Saturday. But yeah, without further ado, Everton 0, Brentford 0, a bit of a snooze fest, but I've managed to pick out some exciting screenshots, and I think there's a few interesting things to do with our shape that I want to talk about in particular. So this is how we lined up. Okay, I'm going to look at the Everton lineup first before we get onto ours. But in terms of their danger man, I was worried about McNeil in midfield. I actually think we did a pretty good job of containing him. I was worried about Ndai on the left-hand side, but I thought Sepp actually handled him really well throughout the game, although he did look like a really good player and Everton will do well to keep him. But yeah, I think those two were the danger men. I'm not too worried about Calvert-Lewin because I think, there's been so much talk about Calvert-Lewin being the backup striker in the England setup and, all these things, and I am yet to see a sustained period where he scores goals. I think he had one season where he might have scored 15 or so goals, but besides that, honestly, he played okay, but just in terms of what you want from a striker, in terms of returns, you compare him to someone like Wissa. Wissa's got 7 goals in 9 games, and Calvert-Lewin, I think, maybe has 1 this season. So those were their danger men. I was looking at McNeil, I was looking at Ndai, but that's why I was confident going into it. Although Dyche has, a really good record against Thomas Frank, I actually just thought this season, considering their start to the season and how they kind of picked it up, and then they've kind of plateaued again, I actually was pretty confident going into it. But having said that, Goodison's a tough place to go. That's why I think I would have taken a point. But a good performance and a point, I think, would have been a good result before the game. Having gone down to 10 is a really, really good point. But what I want to point out and what I found interesting about our shape on Saturday was that KLP was playing that left-back role that we've seen him adopt so many times. And out of possession, it was actually Damsgaard occupying this left-wing position. So when we didn't have the ball, KLP would tend to drop. Damsgaard would tend to drop a little bit more as well. And then we kind of just be in a solid 4-3-3 with Jensen and Vitali as the kind of box-to-box 8. Neither of them an out-and-out 10. And then Brian was holding the width. And Wissa down the middle. What I found interesting about our shape was that when we did have the ball, when the ball was in our possession, Damsgaard dropped into there. KLP was given a lot of license to go forward. And we'll look at his average positions because as you'll be able to tell how much he went forward in this game, even when we were down to 10. Pinnock kind of comes further out over here. Collins drops into the middle of the back 3. And we kind of revert to a kind of 3-4-3 with KLP down the left. Sometimes Brian would actually come closer to Wissa and occupy the half spaces in between Branthwaite and Mikalenko. But what I liked to see is that it was quite positive. Damsgaard almost had a free role in there. He'd be popping up here. He'd be popping up in the middle of the pitch. For Wissa's chance, he actually popped up in the right of the pitch. But what I like to see is that we're kind of giving Damsgaard that free role that I think his performances warrant. And I like the fact that KLP, whilst his natural position is left wing, whilst we're in possession of the ball, he's allowed to play that role. It's only when we don't have the ball and when we're defending that he drops back in, and then we shift back into this kind of 4-3-3 shape with Damsgaard out on the left. But I thought that was really interesting. It's taken me a couple of tries to actually figure out what we've been doing, but having watched the game back, it's clear to see that Damsgaard, when we do have the ball, just comes into these little pockets and picks up the ball in between the lines. He kind of has a free roll out of that diamond in midfield. Those are the lineups, and I do think that if we managed to stay at 11v11, I do think we would have ended up winning the game. It was a really positive first half. I actually thought that at the start of the game, in typical Brentford style this season, it took us a little bit of time to bed in. Flecken makes a really good save that we're going to touch on. But after about 25-30 minutes, if there was one team that was having the better of the first half, it was definitely us. I'm going to talk about the momentum bars. I'm going to show you some of the chances that we had before half-time, but obviously the game swings on that massive decision. But let's just get straight into the screenshots. So here, this is very early on in the game. Everton have the ball, and I just want to point out our shape here. We've got a solid bank of 4 at the back. Damsgaard's kind of on the left wing position. Matthias Jensen's actually weirdly high in this position, but it's just the screenshot I've picked. But you can see Vitali, Norgard and Jensen, who would normally be in there, Wissa and Brian. So there's a clear out of possession shape right from the start of the game. This I just want to highlight because this was actually, I'd probably say, Everton's best moment of the game. And this is in the whole 90 minutes. They did have a chance in the second half that we're also going to look at. But the ball comes out to McNeil, who's their danger man. I think he plays it out to Mikalenko here, or maybe that's Lundstrom actually. He whips the ball in. It comes back out to Gay on the edge of the box, and it is a really, really, really good reaction save from Mark Flecken. He must listen to this. He must watch my channel because I criticised him in the last video, and that normally happens, even Ealing Road podcast or this channel. When we criticise a Brentford player, they normally have a blinder the next week. We should criticise players more often. We should criticise a whole team because maybe then we'll actually start to play really, really well. But as you can see, sees the ball really, really late, and manages to get a strong hand to it. But I think that was Everton's best moment in the game. This screenshot I just want to pick out because it was a really nice moment, and especially from the away end, it looked like a fantastic ball. And having watched the game back, even on comms, I think it was Leon Osman who said, wow, that is a fantastic ball from Matty Jensen. And he does have that quality. We know he has that quality. I'm thinking about the whipped ball last season against West Ham, I believe it was, when we went 2-1 down, and then we brought the game back to 2-2. And then I think Nathan Collins or Mavropanos scored an own goal in that game. But I'm thinking about Matthias Jensen's ability when the ball's rolling towards him to get the curve and the pace on the ball. He's so, so good at just whipping balls into the cross when the ball's been laid off to him and the ball's not dead. And that's exactly what happens in this set piece. He gives it to Damsgaard. Damsgaard rolls it back. And I just want to point out Ethan Pinnock in the box. His movement to get away from Abdoulaye Doucouré here is really, really nice. And if this came off, it would have been straight from the training ground, and we'd be talking about another Keith Andrews set piece. Comes back to Matty Jensen. He whips the ball in. As you can see, Ethan Pinnock's already made the movement to get away from Doucouré. And if the ball was just a little bit better, or I don't want to say a little bit better actually, if the ball was a little bit deeper to where Ethan Pinnock's actually made his run, or if he makes the run closer to Tarkowski here, he's got a free header in the box. But it was an unbelievable delivery, and I think it just lands just there in the 6-yard box, which is just a little bit behind where Ethan Pinnock made his run. So if Ethan Pinnock curved his run and kind of made his way around the back of Mikalenko there, or even if Nathan Collins continued his run into the box, would have had a free header on goal. But Keith Andrews, keep doing what you're doing, because, you know, teams are getting really stifled by our set pieces at times, and this would have been textbook Brentford. Around 28 minutes on the clock, this is when we started to come into the game, I felt, and had started to play football in Everton's defensive third a bit more. But I've highlighted it so many times on this channel. Brentford's ability to get themselves out of tight situations this season has been so, so impressive. Here, Mark Flecken gives the ball out to Ethan Pinnock. He pings it out to KLP, who was on the left. And by the way, I thought KLP was so impressive yet again. I mentioned it in the 5 things we learned about Brentford, but he's being utilised in a position that it's not his natural position, right? And he's doing such a good bloody job of it. Whether it was defending against Lindstrom in this game, there were so many times where he snuffed out the danger in the corner here, or when we switch shape and we're in a 3-4-3 in possession and we've got the diamond in midfield and KLP's providing the width down the left. He's doing such a good hybrid role this season. But anyway, back to the screenshots. Ethan Pinnock pings it out to Keane Lewis-Potter on our left-hand side. He plays a lovely little ball into Mikael Damsgaard, who's about to come into shot there. Lays it off to Wissa, and KLP's already gone. And this, like, I've said it so many times, but KLP's ability down this left-hand side to connect play and to be that outlet, whether he's going down 1v1 or whether he's playing cute little passes into midfield and then continuing his run so that he gets the 1-2 or gets onto the end of an opportunity. he does it so well. And in this instance, Wissa lays it off to him with a better touch. We're in. And Jensen's gone and Wissa's gone. And I think it was only Brentford defending at that point, but he ends up just kicking it out of play. But this just, these little things, these little fine details with KLP that he just needs to iron out a little bit to take him to that next level. And then once he does do that, that's when I think we'll start to see the best of him in terms of getting the goals, getting the assists, popping up in important moments and actually burying some of his chances. Because there was a chance in the second half, and everyone will know in the away end, and we're going to forensically analyse it a bit in this video, but KLP does all the good work down the left-hand side. He beats his man, he continues his run, and he just makes the wrong decision at the wrong time, and it costs us what I think would have been the clearest goal-scoring opportunity of the game. But anyway, in this instance, he just kicks it into touch. But this was like starting to see, this is the point in the game where we're starting to see Brentford actually do more with the ball than we'd seen in the first 30 minutes. The Everton pressure had kind of eased a bit, and we were slowly feeling our way into the game. This was our big chance in the first half, and there's an air of offside around this, but Norgard picks up the ball in midfield, plays it back to Collins, who finds Damsgaard in the middle of the pitch. And this is what I meant about his free roll, because normally out of possession, he's way up where KLP is now. But in possession, he's kind of given license to roam across the middle third of the pitch, whether it's in these half spaces or this pocket in midfield, or in this case, this half space in between Ndai and Decore in midfield. He has a little scan to the right to see Brian and Bumo, but he thinks no, he knows Wissa's going to be on his bike. And it's what I mentioned in the last video about when we pick up the ball in these half spaces. I actually said it was Brian, but this time it's Damsgaard. He's always gone. Wissa is always gone. He's like, it must be, I'd be so intrigued to be a fly on the wall in these conversations that Thomas Frank has with Johan Wissa, because I think he's telling him whenever our players get a little bit of space in midfield, when they've got time to pick their heads up and turn on the ball, whether that be Damsgaard, whether that be Jensen, whether that be Brian and Bumo, I think he's said to Wissa, you need to be in the space where you're in between the centre-backs and you're ready to run, because he's got the pace on most centre-backs in the leagues. So it's great, like Wissa's positional sense and his ability to get himself in between centre-backs and get them on the turn so that they're tracking back, to sense the danger that when Mikael Damsgaard has the ball, he's going to be able to play this pass. I think it's been fantastic, and it's been what's contributing to goals. I'm thinking of the goal where Vitali picks up the ball against Bournemouth and he already making the run in between the centre-backs, and then he puts the little dink to finish in. It's happened so many times this season, and it's really clever centre-forward play from Wissa. At this point, like from the away end, is one of those things where you can't really judge the depth of the play. So I didn't even know that he'd gotten in between or behind Branthwaite and Tarkowski here. But when you see that Tarkowski is the covering defender and Wissa's actually in front of him, you're putting your fucking house on him scoring, right? I mean, the only thing that I would say is that it's on his left foot. Can he go round the keeper here? Can he go round Pickford? I think so. I think maybe if he was on his right, he would have done that, or he would have buried it. But I think it is a good save from Pickford. But like, you know, this is Johan Wissa. I mentioned in my last video that when he gets into these situations, you don't think he's going to miss, which was what made it so surprising that he doesn't stick this in the back of the net. The hint of offside, you can't really tell from this angle, and it's the only angle that they showed on the Premier League recording that's on the Brentford website, but I think maybe Mikalenko's playing him onside there, you know. So, I mean, it is a really good opportunity. I think it was 0.8 XG from Wissa's XG, or from the shots that he generated, maybe a little bit less because I think he had another shot in this game, but you would be expecting him to bury that. 0.8 XG for Wissa, that's his bread and butter, that's his meat and drink. So that was an opportunity missed. I do think he should be scoring there, and whether he takes it around the keeper or whether he dinks it like he did against Bournemouth, but he's set standards this season, and we'd expect him to meet those standards 9 times out of 10. So maybe I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe this is the one time that he misses, but next game if he gets an opportunity like that, he's got to score. So this is it. This is the red card incident, and I'm going to go through it step by step, and then we'll kind of come to a conclusion afterwards. Janelt picks up the ball on the left-hand side, puts the ball back into the box. Ethan Pinnock wins the header, heads it back across goal. And at this point, you can't even see the ball in this screenshot, but it's somewhere in there. But what I want to stress is that Christian Norgard has every single right to be going for that ball, whether he hurts his man, whether he makes contact with an Everton defender, whether he makes contact with the ball. From this position, Ethan Pinnock picking up the ball, Christian Norgard's already made the run. He has every single right to be getting into that area there. Every single right, and challenging for the ball. And just to highlight that, like, there is no way that he's going to pull out of a tackle here. When the ball's there is absolutely no way that he's going to pull out of a tackle. And Callum actually raised a really good point on the podcast about whether if he makes connection with the ball when he gets here and he scores and then he takes Pickford out afterwards, what would happen in that situation. Does the goal get chalked off and Norgard gets a red card, or does the goal stand because he gets the ball before he makes contact with Pickford? I just want to talk about the definition. A tackle or challenge that endangers the safety of an opponent or uses excessive force or brutality must be sanctioned as serious foul play. Any player who lunges at opponent in challenging for the ball from the front, from the side, or from behind using one or both legs with excessive force or endangers the safety of an opponent is guilty of serious foul play. I don't think he's using excessive force, for one. He's making a genuine attempt to play the ball. Yes, he's lunging, but he's lunging for the ball. He's not lunging at Pickford. He's lunging for the ball. He never takes his eye off the ball. So I can understand why in this day and age it's given as a red card. So if the red card has been rescinded because they've deemed it to not be serious foul play, because he's made a genuine attempt to play the ball, because he's not used excessive force, why the hell, when the referee goes over to the monitor, are we showing him this replay in slow motion? Why the hell are we doing? Like, I don't understand like how you can get it so wrong in a split second, and why you're telling him to go over to the monitor, and we all know what happens when he does that, but why you're showing him this replay in slow motion. You're not showing him the replay that we saw on the big screen from the away end. You're showing him the only replay where you could probably watch it and think that that's excessive force, or that's brutality, or that's endangering the safety of an opponent. You've only shown him that replay, so you've given him one thought by going over to the monitor, send him off. And that's exactly what he does. So it just, like, instinctive inconsistency. You know, I think one of the top comments when you looked at the red card posts on Sky Sports News or BBC Sport or anything like that was, well, Pickford did it to Van Dijk a couple of seasons ago and tore his ACL, yet they looked at that and deemed it not endangering the safety of an opponent, when he's literally scissored his legs around Van Dijk's kneecap and torn his ACL. In this instance, it looks bad, the studs are up, but he never takes his eye off the ball, and he's not endangering the safety of an opponent, and he's not using excessive force. They've rescinded the red card, and it just completely ruined the game. I was saying to my mates in the concourse at half-time, it's just like, if you're going to make that kind of decision, you have to be 100% sure about it. And the fact that they've rescinded it just makes me think that the guys told Chris Kavanagh to go over to the monitor with one thought in his mind, and that's send him off. They've not said all the other characteristics of the incident. Is he looking at the ball? Is he making a genuine attempt to play the ball? Is there any malicious intent? Is there anything that suggests that he has gone out to hurt Pickford? No, there's not. Well, then make your fucking decision. Anyway, I've got a few screenshots from the second half. Honestly, there wasn't too much in it. Just before we get to that, though, have a look at the momentum bar here in the left-hand side of the screen. As you can see, Everton start well. We kind of come back into it. Then Everton are on top at about 30 minutes. And that's where the most momentum in the game is found. Apart from that big save from Mark Flecken at the start, was when we were on top just before half-time. Then the red card happens there. And it's literally the clearest example of it being one-way traffic after that. But again, the momentum never gets higher than the first bar that they got in the first minute with that shot on goal that Mark Flecken saves. But just to go back, you look at our players' average positions in this game, we're so much deeper than Everton. If there was a way to measure first half average positions against second half average positions, would be so much higher. But I just want to highlight KLP here, doing a lot of work, the highest out of the three defenders. Is what I mean about us slotting into that shape when we're in the 3-4-3 formation. But he was doing a lot of work going forward, even when we were down to 10, which is what I really liked. It wasn't a kind of let's shut up shop completely. We were looking for the win, and that was demonstrated by our substitutions and bringing on Kevin Schade and Igor Thiago in that game. But yeah, Mikkel Damsgaard in midfield, Jan Out, Norgard, Jensen, Wissa and Mbumo, and that's our kind of shape. But we were so much deeper purely because of that red card. And just to show even more, you look at the first half possession, it's just about even. We've got better expected goals, we've got more possession, we've got two big chances, we've got more shots. And then the second half, all Everton. And they did absolutely nothing with it. They couldn't even generate 1 XG. And I did a video on TikTok, which you can also find under this same handle, at MikeLivein5. The link for that will also be in the description. It's not a matchday vlog because I don't want to be one of those people, but it's kind of just like I thought it was quite cool to make. It was quite fun to kind of stitch together, kind of come with me to a Premier League away day kind of video. But I wasn't kind of talking into the camera and being some of those people that do that at games, which I find really, really strange. Why did I get onto that? But yeah, I said in the TikTok is that Everton fans will be so pissed off with that performance, because to not even be able to generate 1 XG against a team down to 10 who are completely camped in their own half, and for us to actually have the better moments in the game. I'm going to talk about the KLP chance, and Everton did have one big chance in that second half, but they didn't take it. But we never looked like conceding, and that's what surprised me so much, because I was saying to my mates in the concourse at halftime, you know how the pattern of the game's going to go. You know that it will probably be 0-0 until the 90th minute, and that's when they'll win it. And we didn't. We defended astutely. Collins was excellent. Pinnock, I actually thought, had maybe his best game of the season. Of course, he's forced to defend more, so he's showcased more. But I actually thought that was really, really nice to see, because we've kind of been talking about him not being able to maybe adapt to this new style of play and playing the ball on the ground. But I thought with the ball and without the ball, he was excellent on Saturday. But I think Everton fans would be so annoyed. Like I've seen the Dyche out brigade and I've seen the Dyche in brigade, and there's I don't want to say an even split. I think they're more towards Dyche out now. To be held by Brentford at home with 10 men is not a good look for Sean Dyche. But anyway, just to illustrate the fact that we were it was complete one-way traffic in the second half, but with little for them to shout about. You can just see it in the stats here. Only one big chance created that we're going to talk about. Lots of shots, not many on target. Only 3 saves for Mark Flecken to make, and I'm pretty sure they're all routine. But anyway, back to the screenshots. Oh, makes me sick, this image. This was their only big chance of the second half, and if you're an Everton fan, you're absolutely fuming. Dwight McNeil whips a ball in, it drops to Illiman and Dye in the box. And if they want anyone on this finish in the 6-yard box, it's probably not Mykolenko, because he ends up just skying it over the bar, and it's a really bad chance wasted from Everton, because I do think if they score in this game, I'm not sure if we come back into it. Yes, we'd have made more subs, and yes, we'd have committed more men forward, but as we all know, when you commit men forward with 10 men, you're more likely to be on the counter. So if they score this, we might be talking about another loss on the road, but we're not. We're talking about our first point on the road. So all in all, a really, really good performance in the second half. I do want to point out this chance from KLP. I mentioned it earlier. I think this comes from a KLP throw-in, which works its way to Wissa. Then the ball gets lofted up into the air. But as you can see, KLP's already going there. He's already going. Matthias Jensen, and I want to analyse this pass in a bit more detail in the next screenshot, but what a pass. What a pass this is. Daisy cutter, sidewinder, call it what you want, but he gets his foot right up over the ball, skids it along the ground. And KLP, when he gets into this situation here, he's got Wissa there, he's got Brian over there. He does the right thing by driving towards goal and not by going on the outside like he does sometimes. Gets into this position and he ends up shifting it onto his right and just firing a shot straight at Pickford. But if you're going to get there, surely you've got to play that pass to Wissa, who would then have a free shot on goal, or have Brian, if I think that's Mykolenko, comes to press him, as a free man at the back stick. But this was like, from the away end, it was like that was the chance. That was the chance to get something, or to get 3 points from this game. Because, as I just mentioned, if Everton score, then I'm not sure if we come back into it. But if we score, then we have more impetus to sit back. Everton starts to throw bodies forward, and then we could bring on Sharda, then we could bring on Thiago, and maybe we get a goal on the counter. But if we were going to score at any moment, it was this one. He's got to pass it to Wissa there. He's got to pass it to Wissa. And you back Wissa on his right foot to actually bury that in the bottom corner. Or if Mykolenko comes to press him, like I just said, to give it to Brian, and then Brian whips it into the far corner. But, so frustrating. So frustrating. But just to kind of, this pass from Matthias Jensen, hang it in the Louvre. It was so good. And we know that he has that in his locker. And he quietly did a really, really good job yesterday, really quietly, because he's just nursing, coming back from this injury. And, Damsgaard's kind of locked down that position, the one that he likes to play in. But he had that really good season a couple of seasons ago when we almost got Europe. And then last season he kind of faded a little bit. But since he's come back from the injury, he's been asked to do a job because of red cards or injuries or whatever. He's come into the team and he's doing a really good job. And I do like this shape. It's a good way to accommodate all of our best players in the team by having one shape in possession and one shape out of possession. And I do like the fact that with that diamond, with Damsgaard as like the spearhead of it, and KLP pushed up that way, and Pinnock just a bit further on, I do like that. Like that midfield of Norgard, who gives you the solidity, Vitali, who can do both, but also recently showing that he's also got that creative spark sometimes, which is what I criticised him for a few weeks ago, but he's now starting to show it. And Jensen is that kind of one that knits it all together, whether that be playing passes like I just showed you, or whether that's just taking a bit of time on the ball, or whether that's spraying it out to KLP or Brian or whatever. And then you've got Damsgaard, who's that pocket player, who's going to be breaking the lines, who's going to be turning on the ball, who's going to be beating men, who's going to be feinting and doing all the things that we've become so accustomed to seeing Damsgaard do, and do really, really well. But anyway, another screenshot just to highlight, like, oh God. He's got to improve his decision making because he's got everything else. He's been able to do the defensive work. He's been able to do the attacking work. He's been able to link the play between Damsgaard and Jensen and Wissa and even Brian and Bumo sometimes when he cuts in on his right and he shifts it out to the edge of the box. But when he gets into these situations, if you cut in and you don't opt for the pass, then you've got to put it in a corner. You have to put it in the corner because he does it a lot. It's always straight at the goalkeeper, his shots, when he gets into these positions. So if you're going to pass, then great, because I think Wissa would bury that chance. But if you don't pass and you go for the shot, you've got to at least test Pickford, at least test him, at least make him work for the save. And he doesn't. He just needs one. He just needs one to go in. We've said it so many times. This screenshot, I just want to highlight, and we briefly touched on it in the podcast, and I've touched on it in the 5 things we learned about Brentford video. Again, link in the description for that if you want to watch that. But Brian Mbumo, sometimes he ghosts in games. And granted, it's difficult to take too much out of the Everton game because we were down to 10, and he's not going to have much of the ball. But he was an outlet a lot of times for us in this game, and a lot of times he didn't do much with it. In this case, KLP has a nice bit of work down the left-hand side and then plays a lovely little switch over to Brian Mbumo on the top right. And in this situation, you've got Wissa attacking the box, who's got space to run into. You can imagine Brian Mbumo hanging it up for him, either there on the 6-yard box and he's got to tap it into an empty net. You've got Damsgaard making the run here. You've got KLP making the run on the back of Young. You've got Jensen providing the overlap down that side. But he just runs straight into trouble. And this happened a few times. And I don't want to criticise Brian Mbumo too much, but there are games, he does have games like this. He struggles for consistency so much. And it's actually what I think, like, granted, I know that he's going to get this big move. Like, I think that's definite if he continues with the level of output that he's got. But I do think that he might get a little bit, I don't want to say found out, but I do think if he went to a Liverpool, if he went to a top 6 club, which I think will be his likely destination, I do think his inconsistency will frustrate a lot of fans. It really will, because he does go missing sometimes, and he went missing in this game. And it was just, he gives us so much, but in these games where you need him to be his best Brian Mbumo, because when he's in form, when he's at the top of his game, honestly, there aren't a lot of better wingers in the league. There really aren't. But when he's not on it, it's just, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. When he gets the ball and he goes for these runs, when he's got so many options, he's just making the wrong decision at the wrong time, just runs into traffic here. And we've got 4 men in the box with 10 men. We've got 5 players up the pitch, which means we're susceptible to the counter-attack. And if Everton were any better in this situation, which they weren't, then we get caught out and we concede. So it's really frustrating sometimes. He's got to make better decisions, and he's got to start to get that level of consistency in his game, where I'm talking about him as the best player on the pitch every single week, because when he's at his best, he is the best player on the pitch most weeks. I believe this is my last screenshot and probably what our last chance in the game was. Mark Fleckham plays the ball out to Ethan Pinnock. We're playing out from the back even with 10 men, which is still really impressive. Keane Lewis-Potter again highlights his ability, because he's right-footed. When he picks up the ball from one of the centre-backs, his immediate thought is, can I go inside and then make the run to go this way? And it's what he does all the time. It's what I'm talking about with these little bump passes, with the little 1-2s. In this instance, Damsgaard comes short. I actually think it ends up making its way to Jensen. But KLP's already gone, which is like from this position here to get on the ball where he comes from at 68 minutes when we're down to 10, when he's already been doing so much work in the game. It's so impressive because Jensen picks up the ball, KLP's gone down the left, and it actually ends up working its way out to Vitaly Janelt. And from the away end, if you want one of our centre mids on the end of this shot, you want it to be Vitaly Janelt, because he's got an absolute rocket of a left foot when he uses it. But in this situation, I think he thinks that Matthias Jensen is right behind him, who would have had a better angle on the shot because he didn't have 3 bodies around him like Vitaly does in this case. He ends up letting it go through his legs in a similar way to what he did to Antoine Semenyo in the Bournemouth games. Probably worked well for him, and he's thought maybe I can do it again. But it doesn't work out this time. Not for lack of trying. Like it was a good idea. If Matthias Jensen was a little bit further up, he probably does have the better shooting opportunity. But in this position, just whack it with your left foot. Beat Pickford in the top corner. Send the away end into raptures. But he doesn't. And it's credit to Vitaly, because he's thinking, maybe he's got that. He's had that rocket against Fulham. Thomas Franks told him, hey, not again for the next few games. So maybe that's going through his head at the same time. But in this situation, I'm thinking just smack the ball. Like, give it a go. We're not going to score in any other way. And that's the end of my screenshots for this game. I do want to touch on Igor Thiago. I think that reception from the away end was absolutely fantastic. I can't remember. I said it on the podcast, but I can't remember sort of having that kind of, I can't remember sort of having that kind of reception for a debut in a really, really long time, if ever. I think, the fact that we signed him in January last year and then he got injured against Wimbledon, and it's kind of been waiting for him to come back. And it's actually really nice, the fact that he's come back before he was due to return. I mean, in Brentford's case, it's normally like a few months after they're due to return. That's when they end up coming back. But they said to us that he'd be here like just before Christmas, and he's come back sort of on the back end of November. So for him to come back early, for us to get the news that he'd be in the squad, we kind of knew that he'd be making his debut. And, you can't take too much from it. It was his first minutes at this level. Like, granted, he's played a couple of games behind closed doors, and I think he played another one today, actually. I'm recording this on Wednesday, or Tuesday, sorry. But I actually thought it was a pretty good cameo. Like, he had a few nice touches. He won a couple of fouls. There was a few good moments. But what I really want to talk about, besides the raucous reception that he got from the away end, is where he's going to fit in. Let me just take it back to our 4-3-3 shape that we normally play. In all likelihood, what I think will happen when Thiago gets up to scratch, and I don't think that will be for a while, by the way. He's not, he's been out for so long. And, he's a club record signing. We're going to just kind of slowly kind of feel him into the side. But the straight swap that I don't think will happen is Wissa for Thiago. And I don't think you can drop Wissa at this moment, especially because of his connection with Brian and the fact that those two are the most productive partnership in the league this season. I don't think it will be a straight swap. What I think is more likely is that Wissa will go out to the left, Damsgaard will come into midfield, and it will be Jensen or Vitali that get dropped back to the bench, which, I don't have too many complaints with, to be honest. The only thing I would say is that we've spoken about it a lot of times on the podcast, and it's that Jan Wissa is much better as a 9 than he is as a winger. So it's going to be interesting to see how he eventually works his way into the side. It's not like I don't think anyone's going to keep a position above him and that he's going to be a bench player. We didn't pay all that money, and for him to be dubbed the Ivan Toney replacement, for him to be coming off the bench. What I think in all likelihood would happen is that Wissa will go back as the winger that we bought him as, by the way. It's only like he's kind of had an Ollie Watkins arc in that we bought him as a winger and now he's converted into a striker, and it actually turns out that he's probably better as that 9. But what I think will happen is that Wissa will go out onto the left, Brian will stay on the right, and then we'll kind of get a front three like Wissa, Thiago and Brian, which again pushes Schade a bit further down the pecking order. It pushes Jensen further down the pecking order, and it pushes Fabio Carvalho, who I want to talk about now, a bit further down the pecking order. This Instagram comment from his dad has kind of got me a little bit worried. I remember some Fulham fans saying when we signed him that he was a bad egg. As soon as they got promoted to the Prem, they were kind of saying he was forcing a move out and liking things on Twitter, which I hate players doing. It's what we gave Ivan Toney grief for, and kind of feeding into that narrative that he's going to be leaving. If you're going to leave, then piss off and do it quietly. Don't be shouting about it and kind of flaunting yourself in the press or whatever. I heard it was brought up at the fans forum and that Thomas Frank said he was happy. He's not going to give an honest answer, obviously. He can't just say, no, he's actually really unhappy and he wants to leave the club. But it is a little bit worrying. And the fact that Norgard's red card has been rescinded, I actually think, whilst I do think that Norgard was good up until he got sent off, I actually thought it would be a good opportunity for Fabio Carvalho to come into the team. Whether he got the nod ahead of Jensen, and it would have been a midfield 3 of Vitali as the 6, Jensen as the 8 and Damsgaard as the 10, that's up for debate. But the fact that we've not seen him in so long, like I did a whole video on why he would be the missing piece in Brentford's puzzle, and I don't want to say I'm wrong about him, but I just want to see him be given more opportunities. Like, in all likelihood, the next time we'll see him start is that game against Newcastle in the Cup. And is that a game for Fabio Carvalho, the nimble little diminutive 10, to come into the side against a big, strong Newcastle midfield that contains Guimaraes and Willock and Longstaff? That's not a game for him. So in all likelihood, he's going to throw him in there, probably not be that great, and the jury's going to be out for him. So that's worrying. That really is worrying, because we spent a lot of money on him, and I don't think we spent a lot of money on him for him to be a squad player. The other thing is Kevin Schade. I do want to talk about that as well, because someone highlighted it on Twitter. I saw a tweet about when all the players came over to the away end to kind of greet the fans and say thanks. Schade just walked straight down the other end, and his confidence is just like, it's so low. But what I will say about Schade, and it's what I said about KLP, it's what I said about Damsgaard, it's what we said about Collins, it's what we said about all of these players that we brought in since we've been in the Prem, is that they take a bit of time to get used to how things work and their role in the team. What I'm worried about is that with Thiago coming in, it just pushes Kevin Schade further down the running order, whether that he comes on as the first sub, whether he replaces Thiago down the middle or Wissa comes in. It must do nothing for his confidence to see Thiago coming back. And I'm just struggling to see where Schade fits into the team if we're pushing Wissa onto the left wing, and if we've got Brian, who's the stalwart at right wing. But maybe his time will come when Brian goes. Like, we don't know yet. So his confidence is completely shot. He looks pissed off after every game. He doesn't thank the fans, which I don't think is a good look, especially when you've not been playing well. But what I'm trying to say is I think his time will come, but I'm not sure if it will be this season. I don't think we're going to see the best of Kevin Schade this season, playing down the left or playing down the right. He's definitely not going to be playing his best through the middle, because we've kind of spoken about that already. But I just think it's just a bit of time for him. I think that's what I want to say. When Brian isn't the main man at the club and there's a position there, maybe when Wissa even moves on, because he's coming towards the end of his contract and he's getting a little bit older too, maybe that's when we start to see Kevin Schade, who's a lot younger, come into the team. I don't know. But going on to Leicester, with Norgard's red card being rescinded, I don't think there'll be too much of a change. I would like to see a change, because whether or not Leicester have a new manager, I do just think, considering our home record at the GTEC this season, we just need to start fast against Leicester and stifle them a little bit, get an early goal, get a couple of early goals, and then shut shop at the back. If we have a more attacking midfield trio than this three here, maybe it's time for Fabio to get a start, which might put out some of the fires that were started by his dad on Instagram. I never thought I'd say that sentence before, but maybe that would be one to give Norgard a rest, maybe, because he's not been having the best time recently. Maybe you drop Vita in. Maybe you bring Fabio into this position here, the one that Vita would potentially be in. I would like to see a more attacking lineup for sure, but I like this in possession shape and this out of possession shape. The fact that Damsgaard could come in there and KLP gets pushed up that way. I do like that, but I want to save the Leicester preview for the Ealing Road podcast, because I feel like with all that's gone on there, with Steve Cooper being sacked, I feel like getting the inside story on that would be a lot more interesting than for me to go through screenshots of where we can hurt them. I'd rather get it straight from a Leicester fan, straight from the source. But yeah, that's the end of this full-time analysis show. Again, I want to say a big thank you for the feedback and the views on the last video. If you haven't watched that already, as I mentioned at the top of the show, the link for that will be in the description. The link for the latest Ealing Road podcast episode will also be in the description. And if you want to follow me on TikTok as well, where I'm kind of making short form content and just speaking about football in general, but also posting a lot of stuff about Brentford. I posted a really cool video, I thought at least, on Brian and Bumo, on set piece coaches, on how Brentford were kind of pioneers in respect to set piece coaches coming into the game in England. The link for that will also be in the description. But yeah, thanks for watching as always. Let me know how you felt about the Everton performance. Let me know how you feel about getting our first away points on the board. Let me know how you feel about the red card. I think we're all kind of in the same position about it, really. But yeah, comment down below, subscribe to the YouTube channel, go follow the podcast, follow me on the socials, all of that good stuff. Go do it. Everything will be in the description, and I'll see you on the next video.